Okay, fine.
She's an
Okay, we're about to start here. Let me 1 second. I'm just put this on for a few minutes. It's okay. You can still schmooze while I open this up.
What's an observational humanist?
I mean, she just talks about what she sees in the world. She was living in New York, and she had young children, and she was experiencing the world in a new way, and recognizing the absurdity of some of the situations she was in, and just started writing about that.
Oh, wow.
You know, what it's like to be a mom in the Upper West Side, and you know, talking about things that real people do resonate with, you know, but then again, you know, living a wealthy
Testing 1 2 3.
lifestyle
Testing
that
1 2
most
3.
People can't relate to
Testing.
Can't at all.
Most of us are
Testing 1 2 3.
Listen to
What's
it,
happening?
At least get the parenting aspects of it.
Testing 1 2
We
3.
should all have those troubles, right?
Right.
I'm joking.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but what's her name?
Jill Carter.
Testing 1 2 3. How come it's not working?
G. K-A-R-G, as in
What's
the-
going on here?
M-A-N. Is she the one that put her son on the
Testing
subway
1 2 3. Testing 1 2
with a
3.
map when he was like 8 or 9
Testing,
years
testing.
old, and
Okay, good.
people were scans and all,
All
and
right.
She felt like you should be able to learn how to get around.
Maybe.
Orchato Adonai Eloheinu melech
I
haolam
don't
she'akol
know if it's the
neheh
right. I don't know if it's the right name. It was something I read about like online a few years ago. I don't know if it's the same
okay.
one or not.
Yeah,
Okay,
very well.
I'm waiting for my copy. Thank you, Amy.
Yes, because you looked up.
Everybody but you, huh?
Yeah, great. So everybody has a copy?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we're on page 6. We're on page. I got page number because somebody wrote on this copy page number.
I did last.
It was a sneaky little angel. Okay, fine.
The good kind.
A little. I don't want to use the word.
Okay.
Is this the one that has the name of the most powerful angel?
Yes,
Okay.
but it's before that. Actually, we're going to start on page 5 because we're going to lead up to it. Okay, because once again, okay, we're on creating angels. This is class 6. We're going to talk about the will because don't forget we have to go into the essence. Really, the essence of man is the thoughts. We understood last week was that the garments of the soul, the thoughts are garments of the soul. Our thoughts are garments of the soul, gates. We spoke about a little bit about the Baal Shem Tov was mentioned last week. Gates to the soul, right? You have to have judges and officers in all your gates, and the Baal Shem Tov refers to this as love and fear. Love and fear, which are the thoughts of love and fear, they are the ones who have to be judges and officers at the gates, your thoughts, which is going to be the gateway into your soul. Okay? So the idea here is to understand the relationship of our soul to our thoughts. Okay? But to go back into the statement, and this is really where we're going to kind of have to jump through, is understanding the original statement that we start off with, which is this whole phrase from our rabbis of blessed memory is B'derech shadam rotzeh lelech molichin oso, which is in plural, in English, in the way which a man wants to go, they lead him. Which is the way which a man wants to go, they, meaning the angels that man creates with his mind, they lead him. But to go into the phrase just a little deeper, the way which a person wants, will. Okay? The idea really is to get to the will. Okay? Just 1 second. There it is.
Is that phrase in here somewhere? Or
Yes, it is.
sorry.
I'm not going to tell you where. Okay? You'll find it yourself. Okay? It's in the very beginning, like page 2. Okay?
I wasn't here. That's
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay? Here, I got my notes here. This is even better. Okay, fine. Right. So the will. The idea really here is that I've been searching high and low. I've heard about it from some people in the past, not rabbis, about the disabled will. You know, because people can want one thing and yet it doesn't happen, right? They can will something, right? And somehow just things get mixed up, right? So the idea really here is how do we unify that will? Okay? So ultimately here, what I wrote down here on the will, ultimately the decider is what's going to be the will. What do you want? The biggest phrase and the biggest question that you have to be able to answer any given time of the day. To be able to reach deep into your soul, because that's where the will is. What do you want? Ma'at rotzah in Hebrew. or fear of man. Ma'ata rotzeh, 3 words. What do you want? And if you can answer that with absolute clarity, then you're on track. If you're wishy-washy, so you have some Amalekites that you have to kill. Okay? The idea is to have absolute clarity. Okay? What do you want? And of course, that's in the deepest sense. And it's always done with we ask that question, and then there's many other questions that we'll get into later. Because our mind is like a supercomputer. If you ask it a question, eventually you'll get an answer of some kind. Okay? And the question answer is in Kabbalah what makes the partsuf, that makes the whole set, that makes what we call a whole structure. When you have question and answer, right? We start off with question. It's called mochin de katnut, small-mindedness, i.e. exile. And then when you have the answer, of course, that's called redemption, right? That's called geula, okay? And when you have question and answer, so then you have the whole package. You have the structure, and in Kabbalistic terms, it's called a partsuf, a whole set, okay? And it works that way with in the most simplest ideas of reaching for a pen, right? If you weren't trained at reaching a pen ever, just reaching for a pen, right? See, a person who, let's say, God forbid, he suffered a stroke or some issue that he needs to be rehabilitated, right? He needs rehab, right? Physical therapy, he needs to go ahead and retrain his hand-eye coordination, and there's a lot of stuff that goes back and forth until it's absolutely retrained. Here, we're already trained at reaching for the pen, right? But in that sense, that's like a baby, a child who's training for the first time how to grab something, right? How to reach for something, right? There's a whole question-answer that goes on. Is this the right place? Is this the right place? No, it's not. Move there, adjust here, until there's finally a set course and a perfect alignment with the will, right? So then it cannot be manifested, okay? So here, let's read here. Ultimately, the decider is the will. The will is the point of meeting between the soul and the body. Independently, because the soul is so sublime, we can't even reach it. The will you can barely reach, okay? But you can reach the will. But beyond the will is the soul, and it's very sublime. The body, of course, has its own will also that we're going to get into. Independently, neither has a will until a soul enters the body and becomes a novel creation called a bodified soul, okay? In other words, until they're together, nothing can really be expressed. Intrinsically, the body does not want to follow the will of the soul.
It says does.
Intrinsically, the body does want to follow the will of the soul, thank you, to be a dwelling place for the divine presence. I would say intrinsically, I don't know if that's a typo or not, because there is the will that the body has. There is what we call the evil inclination. We call that the lower soul, the nefesh, okay? But I would like to say intrinsically, because really, bottom line, it also wants to do the will. It also wants the ultimate for itself and for all of creation. It's just stuck. It likes chocolate. And it wants now. But bottom line, in the deepest recesses, even of the body, it wants to do the right thing. Okay? But it just can't. Okay? So there's almost like two different voices or two different messages that the body is going to transmit. Okay? The lower soul. Okay? The parable comes out to me, okay, is the famous parable of the Zohar. Okay? I'm just trying to reach for a pen somewhere. The parable of the Zohar, fantastic parable, goes like this. The king, has a son, and he educates his son on the ways of being a prince, right? Yeah. He educates his son On the ways of being a prince, you're going to be a senior. You're going to take over the king. You got to behave in a noble manner. You got to behave with nobility, right? And then he invites the king, hires a prostitute to come in and try to seduce the king, the son of the king, right? Hires her, saying, I want you to do this, and you got to give at all you got to try to seduce him. I want you to seduce my son. So here's the prostitute. She's hired, and now, of course, the son is introduced to you. Here's your new personal secretary. Okay? I don't know if she dresses provocative or not. It doesn't matter. You can even dress very modestly and still be provocative. But in any case, her job is to try her best to seduce the son. And yet, within her also, she wants the son to pass the test. It's a test. Okay? So the evil inclination, on one side, it has to give it its all. It's being hired by the king to seduce. It doesn't get paid if it does a cheap job.
Right.
She won't get paid, right? And then on the other hand, she really wants him to win. So the body, in a certain sense like that, has that almost like that double message. It has to present its case with full force. But yet inside, the body also wants to toe the line. Okay? Wants to do what the soul wants. Okay? So let me just write that down here just for a second. Okay. All right. So the soul wants to make the body that dwelling place. That's really what the soul is. In other words, if you were able to go ahead and touch your soul, the inside, real deepest place of the soul, and requires meditation for that, and hisbodedut, and talking to God, because the best aerobics, if I can use that ancient word, aerobics, Pilates, all right, of the will is prayer. That is the ultimate, my Rosh Yeshiva says, the ultimate way to work on your will is prayer. Because why? You're expressing. And when you're involved in expressing and articulating with the letters, with words, right? So that is the ultimate way to focus your will. Okay? But so inside, though, really all the soul wants to do is wants God just to be here now. And not even just for itself, for all of humanity. It just wants that that God should be here in his fullest manifestation, right? And to have a sincere relationship, and all of creation should only have a complete 100% sincere relationship with God. Okay? That's, if you cut the soul in, that's what the soul wants. Everything, and to hold nothing back. Of course, we have interference of the evil inclination, which is another subject entirely, but we're going to touch on that just a little bit. Which I already did. She's the Zona. Zona in Hebrew means prostitute. To turn back to the original phrase saying, the way which a person wants to go, they lead him. The way which a person wants to go refers to will. Will is the factor that sets this process in motion. Will creates powerful angels, the most powerful. Not mind sputter. Okay? Indeed, the idea here is to rectify, or what I would say, align the will, or unify the will, and we're going to do a little exercise soon for that. Okay? From that will, when you do solidify, what do you want? I want X. It could be so bold to really say it with full meaning and clarity, and enthusiasm and consistency and excitement and seriousness and dedication. Okay? So then you're going to create a very powerful force. Okay? It's will that brings rise to needs. Because then, of course, what automatically, when you have that will in focus, it's going to automatically roll out a plan. How it's going to be manifested. How are you going to bring it about? So those would be what we would call the needs, which brings rise to the thoughts which work towards the will's fulfillment. Because, of course, then what's going to happen is all the thoughts are going to be connected to that will in terms of bringing out how we are going to bring out its fruition. Okay? And we spoke a little bit about the two wills, which is, if we want to look at it in a different dichotomy as opposed to soul versus evil inclination, soul versus body, okay? You could look at it as there's two wills, okay? And we are intrinsically made up of, that brings that in the note here, that he brings from, that I brought from Rabbi Ashlag, who's known as the Sulam, that he brings an unbelievable rule. When he explains things, and that's why the study of Kabbalah is so important, because once it brings a principle, and you understand a principle, so then you can see it everywhere, and it explains all things. No matter where you look, no matter what walk of life you're in. When you're inside and looking on the outside, you understand everything, the whole spectrum of everything in terms of what is really happening. So he explains, what did God make outside of himself that he wasn't part of, that made creation? Because don't forget, if God is everything and everything is included in God, what did he make that was novel, that not part of himself, that became creation? Because normally everything is he is everything and everything is him. So what did he make outside of himself? So the Sulam explained just one thing. Just one thing. The only thing is called will to receive. Don't forget, the reason for creation, we say, was God willed to bestow. Why did God make a creation? Will to bestow. Instantly was created, something not part of him, will to receive. I said that to my father-in-law, and I went, oh my gosh, the whole difference. Every single thing in creation, the entire cosmos, everything on earth is all made of this stuff, which, the atoms of everything is called will to receive. That's the only difference between us and God. And of course, my father-in-law says that's all the difference. That's everything. That's a world of difference. Okay? It's a world of difference. The famous parable, so gewalt, and it speaks so much, is the person who died and his soul was going up to heaven. And he was so delighted that the angel is bringing him to this unbelievable place in heaven. He asked the angel, can I see Gehenna? What Gehenna looks like? Hell, I guess we call it. She says, sure, no problem. We'll show you. You turn, screeching, ride in the limo or push the elevator down, whatever you want to look at it. And of course, you've heard this all before. The guy sees the door opens up and there's these tables full of lush, unbelievable, delicious foods and the smells and the aromas. And everybody's sitting around the table and everybody's screaming because their arms are stuck like this. And they can't feed themselves, right? And their arms are stuck. And it's like they're having a rough time. Really tough. Whoa. Okay, I'm ready. And he goes up, and they bring him to heaven, and he sees the tables full of lush food, and everything smells great, and the aromas, and everybody's sitting around the table, and everybody's arms are also stuck like this. What's the difference? They feed themselves. They feed each other. In heaven, one thought. One thought away. Heaven and hell are one thought. Okay? Talk about every thought creates a malach. And Gehenna is because they're only thinking about themselves, so that's why they're stuck. Because they're so self-motivated. They're only thinking, how am I going to feed me? That's wrong. Once they think about somebody else outside of themselves, that's the whole difference in the world. So God creates a will to receive. Okay? That will to receive has to be converted. That's our job. We have to work, because we're in this world to work, on our will to receive, to turning it into a will to receive on the condition that we're giving through our receiving. Al manat lahashpia. Ratzon lekabel al manat lahashpia in Hebrew. And we talked about this last week when I mentioned that the poor person coming into the house of the rich person, and he was refusing, but the rich person, he wants to give him so badly that he's actually in pain because he wants to give. And finally then, the poor person concedes, okay, and the rich person is so happy he can give. So here's the poor person, he's receiving, but only that he knows that he's actually giving to the poor person. Okay, he's not giving to the rich person. So his receiving is on the condition that he's giving. Dynamic principle. Once you understand that, you understand everything. And you can always ask yourself, What am I doing this for? Am I doing this because I'm receiving for the sake of receiving? Or am I doing this because I'm eating only on the condition that my body could be strong and healthy and I can do good deeds and think good thoughts and make the world a better place? Okay? Intention is everything and thoughts are everything. Okay? The trick, which will be discussed later, actually I'm going to bring it to you now, is unifying and magnifying the will that becomes the ultimate creative force. Okay? First, I'm just going to do the next paragraph, and then we're going to go back to the will unification. Okay? What could be understood right away concerning will is that of all the wills we might have inside our psyche, there can be only one dominant will at a time. Okay? The way I heard it explained to me was to picture a funnel. Because, if I ask you, what do you want? Well, I want this, and then you get a list. Everybody's got a list, right? I want to write a book. I want to exercise every day. I want to teach 5 classes. I want to develop my business. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do that. And you got 20, okay? We're going to go a little simple here, okay? So the idea really here is, the way I heard it explained to me was to picture a funnel-like structure in which many wills can be poised to fall into the quote-unquote will chamber, or the one slot. Okay, at any one time. You can only, in the will slot, only one will can go in. Only one dominant will at a time enters the focus area, leading that will's expression. Unfortunately, there can be only one of 2 categories of will. Either it's your evil inclination or your soul. Okay? I don't know if I wrote it down here. Either the will of we'll call it tree of knowledge of good and evil, will be dominant, or the tree of life will be dominant. It's a huge thing there. I'll have to get into that later. These 2 trees, meaning the will of knowledge of good and evil, we're going to call that. Why is it called the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Because it's confusion. Why is it not just called the will of the knowledge of the tree of knowledge of evil? Why is it the tree of knowledge of good and evil? It's because they're all mixed up and intertwined, and you can't really move this finger. I don't know which one it is.
This makes you have a choice.
Right, well, you got to discern. You have to use what's called dot. Dot. Dot in Hebrew means, it's such a big word. It's the biggest concept of all. We're aiming for dot. Dot, I explained it many times in other earlier classes. Right? It means connection. Okay? Literally, it means knowledge. Like, if you know God, right? Like, I know God. That means no matter what is going on out here, you really are totally confident everything is running according to God's will, no questions. Right? Because you know God. Of course, a lot of people are still trying to work to believe God, and we have to utilize the emunah principle, but eventually to get to I know. They asked the Rambam, Maimonides, wrote his huge work, Yad Chazaka, fantastic work, classic work, oral law. He laid it out in a set of volumes, didn't write sources, and the other rabbis could not stand the fact that he did not write sources, and he was questioning if he was even a heretic. They went to go visit him to make sure if he was kosher. Right? Of course, he knew that they were his game. He knew their game. He put milk with meat. Of course, it was almond milk. It was almond milk, right? And with the meat, and they were like freaking him out. He pushing buttons. How do you like that? And they go, so he says, I don't believe in God. I know God. Right? Right? Anyways, freak him out, right? Because he spun him around and like out the door. Okay? Yeah, he took him to school. What?
But do you have to have the emunah before you can?
Of course, we're all, like I say, we're clawing for emunah. We're clawing for bitachon and trust. Thank you, God, for this opportunity to trust in you. Thank you, God, for this opportunity to trust in you. Okay? You get where I'm my drift? Okay?
Is bitachon the same thing as
Stop. Okay, one at a time. Yes, go.
Is bitachon, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but is bitachon the same thing as da'at, or no?
No.
No, you just described it.
Emunah is the body of knowledge of believing in God. It's like the theory. Bitachon is the application of that theory. In other words, when you employ the principles of emunah, you are trusting. Emunah is believing. Trusting is you're in the moment, you're trusting. Got it? One is the tree, one is the fruit of the tree. The expression of emunah is bitachon. Knowing is, come on, there's no question. Like, I know you're sitting in this room here. I don't have to believe that you're sitting in the room. I believe Penina's in the room. No.
Wait a minute.
I know Penina's in the room. Don't tell me if I believe it or not. Don't question my beliefs.
So one is theory, okay, then the application of theory and then knowing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jane, you had a question?
When you talk this situation with was that the Baal Shem Tov you're talking about? I didn't.
Which one?
The example where they're going to come. He didn't give any notation.
The Rambam.
A Rambam.
Rambam. Maimonides. Right? Yeah. Okay. So in any case, okay. So when I speak of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, I'm speaking of confusion versus clarity. Okay? Confusion is tree of knowledge of good and evil, and you have to discern. And that's where our work is. Okay? To work to the tree of life. Okay? So anyways, one of those is going to be dominant. Are you going to be confused or are you going to be clear? Let's just look at it like that. These two trees I really interpret as states of confusion or state of certainty. An example I heard was a person, okay, this was a real story that I heard in a tape from Rabbi Kiva Tatz. Okay? Like the person, Rabbi Kiva Tatz went in and this person was having the leg amputated because of gangrene, because the person was a smoker. Okay? Chain smoked cigarettes. Right? Of course, they didn't take heed to guard their health, and they had to have the leg amputated. And of course, the doctor's going to say, you got to quit smoking because otherwise you're going to lose the other leg. But of course, a year later, the person was admitted to the hospital to have the second leg amputated because they could not quit smoking. Okay? A habit of smoking, a will to smoke versus will to be healthy or save the leg. What's going on? How do you figure that out? What's going on? The answer is only one will can be in that slot. If the will to smoke, pleasure now, I want this pleasure now, I don't care about ramifications, right? Then the other will is not going to be able to go in. It's there, it's floating, but it's not in the slot. There's got to be one focused will in a slot at a time. Okay? That's how the will is working. Okay? So here we read through the story, right? It says the dominant will was screaming loudly from the body to keep on smoking and to pay no attention. The other puny will to listen to the doctors was hanging in the wings. It wasn't in the slot. Okay? Ask yourself right now. Right? What is your single will slot? Or, directly put, what do you want? Like we've been saying all the whole time. Now, spend a minute now and get some clarity. Usually the body tends to be much more in place, pushing you to finish that ice cream in the freezer or the last piece of cake in the fridge. These are safe examples. The body will tends to be very alacritous, pushy, and loud. All this is due to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which brings about the sweet, rancid taste of confusion. In reality, one has to proactively recapture his or her will slot. So in other words, you need to employ another will. I want my will slot for me, for what I really want. Now, we're going to go through an exercise in a minute. If you don't focus consciously, right, don't worry. Eventually, after time and training, the good stuff, hopefully with the help of this book and what we're learning, naturally moves in. One must stay in the conscious awareness towards this and never give up. The goal is to keep reclaiming your will slot joyously. In other words, if you fall to a bad habit, okay, don't freak out because, of course, the biggest thing that the evil inclination wants is for you to give up, despair, and depression, okay? So therefore, you never give up. That's another will, okay? Now, we're going to do, so here, just the last line here before we do this exercise together. I hope you got a pen and paper. I don't have sheets. I'm not even allowed to give you these sheets, by the way. Okay? And I'll tell you why in a minute. But here it says, change your thoughts and you will affect your will. In other words, is there a thought that you cannot think? Yes or no? There is no thought you cannot think. And then, of course, if you access that thought and you know that that thought is true, so then that will affect your will. Because, of course, your will then will be guided towards that truth, that thought. Affect your will, and then, of course, you're going to inspire and enable more of your soul to manifest. That's the gate. The gate is to get to the will. Okay? So you need your thoughts to affect your will to enable your soul to manifest in a greater way. Now, we're going to play a little game here before we go on. Okay? This is called a will unification. Well, the exercise we're about to do. If you got a pen and paper, everybody's got one. Okay? Now, this will unification I got from a Rabbi Niven, who gives absolutely fantastic classes online. I don't think he does it online. He does it through, he has groups. And they call in and they get a class. That was how it was done for me for about 2 years. Fantastic stuff, great stuff, all coming from very holy sources. And the greatest thing that I found about Rabbi Niven, I mean, a lot of good stuff, but the greatest was he paired everybody up. They had to have a study partner, that they had to go over the principles, which is so important all across the board. Why? Because you have to go over what you're learning and you have to bounce it back, because otherwise you won't grow from it. It's just another book. I read the book, it goes back on the shelf, and the people move on and they don't grow. Okay? The idea here is you got to stick with it. You need a coach. You have a chavrusa, right? In order to go over this and to have the back and forth, which I loved about that. And I always thought about that also, in terms of creating a group, a dynamic, because then the energy of that group has its own, perpetuates the constant, back and forth that is needed. Okay? So here, what we do is, so I'm not allowed to give this out because I haven't asked him permission yet. Okay? So if I ask him permission, I'll send him an email, God willing, if I remember. Okay? I'm not going to go over this class, so you guys write in your notes to send me an email to ask me. Okay? So the idea here is what classically is asked, okay, is you have to find something that you want to change. Okay? In other words, right now I want you to go ahead and come up with what is the name of a positive thing that you want. Just write something down, something simple, such as, let's say, I want to quit smoking. Okay, let's just say that. Okay? I want to quit smoking. Okay? That's a positive thing. Not smoke anymore is not so positive, but let's say I want to quit whatever, or I want to do something. Think of something, okay? Or let's say you can say, what's the name of a negative thing that you want to get away from? Let's say I quit smoking. So think of a positive thing or a negative thing. And now what you got to do is I'm going to ask you some questions, okay? And don't think about the answer that I'm going to ask you, okay? When I'm going to ask you these questions, you're not going to think about it. You're just going to write down. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to give it a valuation between a scale of 1 to 10, okay? And you're going to give a number out, but you're not going to think about it. If you have to think about it, then what's going to happen? What's your favorite color? Red? No. Blue? Then you're going to end up being thrown in Monty Python, right into the trompe.
So first answer.
You have to first answer fast. You're asking. Okay, you're gonna be doing a little. I'm gonna be talking. Okay, to you, and once I ask this question, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's say, imagine that you found the thing that you want to do or the thing that you want to get away from. Okay, now on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does your higher soul want the thing? And got to answer it without thinking too deeply. Higher soul. How much does my higher soul want to quit smoking? 10.
10 the max.
Okay? In other words, you're asking your higher soul instantly, higher soul, how much do you want to do X? Okay? Now, how much on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does your lower soul want that positive thing? Now, your lower soul, I'm talking about, lower soul. Just look at it, higher, lower. Lower soul, of course, is going to be your body, right? Okay, lower soul, I don't want to quit smoking at all. 3. Okay, throws out a 3. It's nice, good idea, 3. Okay? How much you want to quit drinking beer? Right? 3. Okay? Okay, so now we have the higher soul and we have the lower soul. Now what he does is you have to cut it in half. Okay, so let's say if it's like, so wait a minute, sorry. So I think what we do is, I think you missed it here, is you have to add them together. So let's say if I say 10, right? And 3, right? So if I take 10 and 3, that's 13, and then cut the number in half, what do I end up with? Okay? So I'll end up with like 10 and 3 is 13. That's almost a 7, right? 6.5. Okay? So I end up with a 6.5. Okay? If I cut it in half. What happens when I cut it in half? We want the number, so that's not a good enough will. In other words, we're trying to get our lower soul and our higher soul to be unified. So what happens if we're lower, if we're not at 8 or 9, right? 7 is borderline. If we're at 6.5, you're not quite there.
That have to be really different.
I
had 10 and 0.
Okay, wow. So then
that's
10 and
gonna be
0,
1.
so then you're a
That's
5.
Good. No, with half of 15 is almost 8.
10 and 0 is 10. You're adding them together and then dividing in half. So you're at 5. It's okay. Your lower soul is like, ice cream now. Okay. So so then we have to weigh it out. The biggest thing, and it brings down in the book of Deuteronomy, fabulous verses there. You'd never see it. You'd skip by it in a second because it's like, what does it have to do with anything? Happen to be actually after Moshe conquers the cities of Sichon and Og, they bring down this weird parable about Bo Amoshlim comes those who make a cheshbon. Okay, it comes with it brings down like a song that the people who lived in that place that are already dead, what they would say. Right? It's like a weird, almost abstract kind of thing that you'd have no idea what it's talking about. It was very secret, and basically what it's hinting to, according to the Ramchal and everybody else, is that a person has to know how to make a calculation. Cheshbon means calculate. And how do we calculate this? Actually, it brings in Pirkei Avot, chapters of the Fathers. Also, the biggest thing which is that a person has to ask certain questions. And the questions he has to ask are, what are the pros of doing this positive thing? In other words, what do I get out of it? In other words, you have to really contemplate and do this meditation. What are the cons of doing this positive things? You have to weigh it out. And you have to write it out. What are the pros? What do I get out of not smoking? Right? I get more health. I get more freedom. I don't have to get bullied by taking a cigarette break. I don't smell. Right? Those are pros. Right? And then what are the cons? And then all of a sudden your lower soul is going to answer. Your lower soul is going to say, well, I love that pleasure. I love that relaxing. Right? So now what you got to do is you got to weigh it out. And once you go over it in your mind and you think about it, what am I gaining? What am I losing? What am I gaining? What am I losing? What am I gaining? What am I losing? And after you weigh it out a number of times, enough, where your mind is going to start to take over and going, well, this really doesn't make sense. And then what happens afterwards, okay, after you do that, when I weigh out the pros and cons of the positive thing, or you can do the negative things also. You can say, what are the pros of doing the negative thing? What do I gain out of this negative thing? You have to ask that too. What are the cons of doing this negative thing? What's the downside? In other words, you have to look at it clearly. When you write it down with a piece of paper, you look at it clearly. And if you have a chavrusa, your study partner, you get to express it and say it over. And then he helps you to weigh it out good. And when you weigh it out good, so then when I weigh out the pros and cons of the positive thing versus the pros and cons of the negative thing, does a picture pop into your mind of how you could be? So then after you weigh it out, what do I gain? What do I lose? You get a picture of yourself, right? Try to re-picture yourself with this habit again, okay? Or just allow a picture to pop up in the mind, right, of how you could be. In other words, you're trying to jump ahead to get a visual of something, of how you are with this positive thing or without that negative thing. So then you're asking the question, right? You ask, does a picture pop into your mind of how you could be? Yes or no? So good. So if you get a yes, what is that picture? Then imagine in your mind for 10 seconds, does it inspire you? So if it does, right, then you go back. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much does your higher soul want the positive thing? And you answer, throw out a number. And then you go, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does your lower soul want the positive thing or the negative? Then you add, and you cut it in half. And then is this number the same as what you did before, the first number? My first number was 6 and a bit. And now if I've done it after, my number is 8.5. I moved. There was a movement. Okay? Doesn't have to be a 10. There was a movement, a shift of some kind. In terms of your calculating and self-calculation about what do I gain, what do I lose, recalculate it, then contemplate over again. Can I see myself as being different? Yes, I can. And then you ask the lower soul, higher soul, and then this is a way how you unify your will. You understand what I'm getting at? It's all about calculation. Yeah.
Unifying will still it seemed to me that the lower soul is the Satan. He's in control of that. When he's in control, I'm not in control. And I don't like that.
Okay, so good. You talk to your lower soul. You tell him, I don't like that. You ain't going to talk to me like that.
No, that's
Absolutely. So your will slot is moving in, and the soul part is moving in because the body also wants to shove stuff in the will slot. You understand? The body's also trying to, well, what about your chocolate tartufo for dessert? And you're going, I want to lose weight, you freak. Right? Get out of my way. Will slot, only one sucker's going in that will slot.
That's right.
I'm going to be healthy. Chocolate tartufo. Healthy. Chocolate. Okay? So, well, maybe we can do chocolate and healthy at the. No, it's a dessert topping and a floor cleaner. Okay, so the idea. So the idea here is right to unify. It's an exercise. Like I say, this was a dynamic thing, but it wasn't really. It didn't take off well. I'm sure he's got it way more developed now because I haven't spoken to him in years. Okay. But the idea here is to unify the will through calculating and contemplating what makes sense, what makes real sense. Because when you resonate with a unified will, then you're leaving the tree of knowledge of good and evil, entering the tree of life, and then you take control.
So one will has to be in charge, and it may allow the other will a little bit, but it has to be in charge.
Yes.
They can't both be in charge.
Right. Yes.
I just wanted to know, did you say where in the Torah again, the thing about the Heshbon, the accounting?
I can show you in Deuteronomy.
It's in Deuteronomy?
Yes, it's in Deuteronomy after Moshe and they defeats the war of the king of Sichon and Og before coming to Israel.
Holding his arms up for...
No, that's Amalek. That's different. Okay? That's different. I'll show you after the class where it is, okay? So I'm glad you asked me that, okay? Let's go on, okay? Alrighty. Okay, so here we are, we're going on, okay? The name of the most powerful angel, right? Even though we have 5 more minutes left, okay? But I've gone over this with so many of you before, and I so much appreciate this, you guys integrating this, because I need it many times. You have to always reflect it back to me when you see me all flustered and frustrated, okay? Later in this book, we will get into producing those powerful energies that will project us to the enchanted garden of destiny. Okay? Rabbi Arush didn't create a book, Garden of Destiny, yet. Okay? Shoot, he probably beat me to it as soon as you read. Garden of Destiny, that's my next book. Okay. Okay. But first, there's one more important thing I must share with you that came to me from the famous holy letter of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm not going to say where I got it, how I got it. But basically it looks like this, and this is so important, and you have to use this tool always and have it always in your pocket. Okay? We've been talking about how our thoughts create our reality. That's what the purpose of this class is. And the will, of course, we've just spoken about. Only one thing goes in the will slot, okay? Now, you have to be able to be aware of your thoughts, okay? And then this is the most important thing. Because what happens when we say the words such as I can't, or it's impossible, or too hard, okay? And we might catch ourselves saying that a lot, right? According to what we've been saying, if you catch yourself thinking or saying this, then what? You're creating a force that will turn to you with a stop sign in his hand saying, sorry, bud, you're not going here. So now there appears to be a barrier. Who's creating that barrier? You are. A man's folly subverts his way. In other words, because the person's own limited nature, I can't, impossible, too hard, creates the force of an angel that pops out of his head with a stop sign going, yes, it's absolutely too hard, my lord. Too hard. No, impossible. Right? And then you see this wall because you're thinking one thought at a time. And you're one thought at a time. And it's a huge wall. And it's a huge barrier. And you're going, God is stopping me. God doesn't want it. And that's where the rest of this proverb goes. And his heart rages against God. God, why don't you want me to... You idiot! You're the one who made the wall in the first place. Your limited style thinking created this barrier. All barriers are really in the mind. It's so true.
It's more than just, it's evil. You're letting the Satan rule your life.
Okay, if you want to call it Sutton, I like
You're
that.
hurting yourself.
It's subtle Sutton because he's like too hard. Too
That's
hard.
not subtle.
Oh, Sutton. There could be much more extreme Suttons. Okay, much more like do this, right? Right?
No, this is
Sutton is Sutton has many voices. You're right. Many voices. Many voices. Okay? But the idea real here is a man's folly subverts his way, his own stupidity, because he says impossible or too hard, and then he blames God for his failures. Obviously, right? Simple. And if you continue thinking those thoughts more and more each day, you are involved in creating that barrier. Think about it. Now you are probably considering, if that's 60,000 angel energies a day, right? Then I'm making, it should be that I am making, right? That I am making, right? Myself responsible for putting barriers in between me and my dreams. How can I overcome that? In other words, Rabbi, I've been around this planet for 50-something years. I've been thinking this stinking thinking all my life. I can't. What do you expect me? 60,000 thoughts a day, every single day. You can calculate that for 55 years. How do you expect me? Listen, the wall is way too big. Right? Build the wall.
Cheaper than $5 million.
Oh, I've been building a wall my whole life. There's no way I can scale the old wall that I built, right? How can it be? Look, I even made the calculation, right?
A single thought could
Right?
tumbling down, right?
So how can I overcome that? It really amounts to right? Over 21.6 million angels a year, less than 5.7 billion. Okay, but I'm sure if you calculate that over a few years, okay? How can I go against that? How can I go against that? But thank God I have found the name of one angel that is the most powerful angel that can tear down any wall or barrier. And the name of that angel is Easy. Easy. Why easy? Because if you say the word hard, what are you creating? Don't forget, you're creating with every thought. If you say the word hard, you just created a hard. Okay? So, in other words, you catch yourself saying hard. Whoa. Okay? You got to get back on track. You are creating a reality of hard or difficult if you say hard. If you say can't, you're creating a reality of can't. So, now the solution to your challenge might not be manifest as soon as you use this angel's name. Okay? In other words, just to say the word easy isn't going to do it, Rabbi. It doesn't solve the problem. right? Right? No, but what is it going to do? Right? Bottom line, for God, nothing is hard. Right? That is a given. Nothing is hard for God, except man's stupidity and limited thinking. A man's folly subverts his ways. Okay? But for the Creator, everything is easy. So, therefore, when I say the word easy, for God, for sure, everything is easy. All solutions, as a matter of fact, are already there. And we all know that. To say otherwise would be heresy, to say that something is hard for God. They do say that in the Chazal does say there's few things that it's hard for God. Okay? One, it says it's hard, zivugim, is hard for God as the parting of the Red Sea. A person's parnasa, his livelihood, is hard for God as parting of the Red Sea. There's two Chazals that states that. But that's not because of God's problem. That's because man's problem. In other words, a person's parnasa. In other words, parting of the Red Sea, there were 12 slots. There were 12 paths, individual paths for each tribe, right? So you got to know which path to go to, right? Got to know which gate, right? 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 All of a sudden you're going through and you're like, wait a minute, what tribe? You're Binyamin, I'm Levi. I'm the wrong lines. You got to back up people, right? Excuse me, you got your luggage with you. You're like, excuse me, you're moving the aisles not big enough. sorry. That just came out. Sorry about that, right? So because man's got to know which path to go through for his parnasa, and also the zivug is because man is always moving, fluctuating with his mind and his level of spirituality. So God basically can't get him to stand still for a minute, spiritual-wise, in order to hook him up with the right partner. Because he's always going like this. So man's got to stand. God's got to, dang it, stand still, you little whippersnapper. Okay? Right? So when it says it's hard, those things for God, it's not literally for God. It's because man's free will is clouds things. Okay? So, anyways, where am I? Okay. But for the Creator, everything is easy. To say otherwise would be heresy. So when we are confronted with our challenge and really say the word easy with conviction, because for God, everything is easy. Okay, and we're going to get into even higher thinking than this. We are allowing ourselves to be open to the solutions that normally would be closed off to our awareness. In other words, if we keep saying hard, difficult, we're blocking in our mind. We won't even be able to see the solution that might be in front of our face. And usually it's always in front of our face. Okay? But if you say the word easy, at least you are opening up a channel, a possibility for God to open up in our minds, to open up our eyes to see the solution. The biggest example of this is with Hagar, who was cast out from Avraham Avinu, right? With Ishmael, and, gave just a bottle, it's bread, take off, desert, right? She thought they were going to die. She put him in a distance away, and she sat a far distance, basically just bent on death. And the verse says, after the angel had a dialogue with Hagar, it says God opened her eyes and she saw a well. It doesn't say God created a well. It says God opened her eyes. The well was there, but her mindset was on death. So therefore she wouldn't even see a well. Okay? So the idea here is, if you say the word easy, even though you don't see the solution to your problem right away, you have to make sure, and this is the test, to keep yourself open to see the solution. Okay? To conclude, we must now consciously commit to become a connoisseur of thoughts. Okay? It took me a long time to figure out the spelling on that word. Okay? Not easy. Okay? A connoisseur, can you imagine now? We are now members of a special elite club. We should have club cards.
Yes, we should.
Special elite club cards. We are connoisseurs of thoughts. Just the best thoughts. I don't drink that junk coffee.
I want to say Starbucks. They're coming after me now. Okay. Used to be like, oh, but now there's way better coffee than that, right? Right? Oh, sorry, let's just say Folgers? Please. Right? I won't even touch I won't even look in the general direction of Folgers. Right? Right? I won't even look in the... Right? You offer me coffee and Folgers? Are you out of your mind? Right? You know what I'm used to drinking? Imagine that if your mind, you think like that. I'm not going to take no crap thought. Excuse my French. Okay? No. I don't think, weird, bad thoughts. Limited thoughts. I am only the best thoughts. Refined thoughts. Right? Like a person who would use power of discernment over what foods he or she eats. I only eat the best foods. Only the best coffee, only the best chocolate, whatever. My mother-in-law, she's a connoisseur of chocolate. She taught me just only a few tricks. Like this coffee, this chocolate stale. This is okay. This I'll give about a 6. She's a connoisseur of chocolate. A person must make a conscious decision to only allow the best thoughts to permeate his or her being. Imagine now you making a firm decision. The one-wheel slot should be for today and concluding only the best thoughts are going in my brain. I'm not letting any junk get in. And that's why they asked when the TVs came out, everybody was getting TV sets in their houses, and they asked the rabbis, can we get a TV? Milton Berle is so funny. And the answer was that Avigdor Miller's is, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, he says, would you open up a sewer pit in your living room?
That's a good one.
No, of course so why would you open up that? It's a sewer pit of thoughts. It may be some good things in there, but how much is that's creeping into your subconscious mind? Okay, just one second, let me finish this line. Truly, there is no better thought diet than our holy Torah, which is given to us by the unlimited oneness, the creator of the universe. Okay? All right? So, here's an exercise. Say to yourself now, this little exercise, I'm now going to be aware of the thoughts I think today. To catch myself whenever I think or say the can't, impossible, or too hard. It should be say the word. Okay? Can't, impossible, or hard. I'm going to mentally decide to utilize my belief system and say the word with belief and conviction easy. Because for God, hard just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense hard for God. From now on, I'm going to greet any challenge with easy. Okay? So what's the key? Easy. You got to get into the easy habit. I gave this class, and one of the students wrote a button. It says easy on it. It's a great button. I don't know. And I put it in my fill-in bag, right? So I have it there. I couldn't pin it and walk around with it.